Sit back and listen to this extremely interesting story.
Life takes you to unexpected places and you meet unexpected people. Peter was 20 years old and worked as an apprentice plumber. He had recently moved out of his parents' house. Life was good, although money was tight. He liked his work, enjoyed living with friends, and thought he had everything figured out. However, recent events showed him that there was truth in the saying that life can take you to unexpected places and you meet unexpected people. Peter makes a series of bad decisions and is masterfully played by Wesley, the owner of the local store. This led to him having to agree to be a male contestant in an adult film. He had only a vague idea of what he had agreed to do when he said that Wesley could film him while he was talking to a girl. It had been nothing like he had imagined. He had been unprepared when he found out it would be with a woman old enough to be his mother. He had never imagined a woman like her could be in the same situation as him and was basically coerced into performing in front of a camera. Then these mechanical actions. It was nothing like the communication he got with other girls. She and Kiera did everything under Wesley's direction. He lost count of how many movies he watched. He even rented amateur movies. He believed that actors enjoy communication. Now he understood it was probably only acting. On the plus side, it was a relief to feel he was getting out of his financial troubles. Peter had haggled with Wesley about how much it was worth to participate in a movie. Peter did a quick calculation once they had agreed. He had to do 12 films before he was debt-free. It had felt manageable then, but now he felt less sure. It had been more difficult than he had imagined. It helped that Kiera was good-looking, but performing had felt so degrading. Peter could imagine how much more degrading it had felt for Kiera, especially since she had ended up in Wesley's clutches due to her husband's gambling debts. Peter thought a lot about Kiera. All he knew about her was her name and the fact that she was older and married. He couldn't imagine that she knew more about him. They were strangers, and it was amazing to know what they would spend time with when they met again. The week flew by quickly. He lived in a small apartment with 4 other boys. They got along well, but were not close friends. Several times he thought about telling them that he was on camera to pay off his debt to Wesley, the store owner. He told them when he first borrowed money from Wesley. They thought it was ridiculous that he had borrowed money from a negligent shopkeeper. However, when his debt to Wesley increased, he stopped talking about it. He was very ashamed that he had fallen into Wesley's clutches. Soon it was the day of the second film, and Peter was preparing again. He took a shower and put on clean clothes. He was tense but felt more prepared for what to expect. He came to the store just before closing. Wesley was standing behind the counter and grinning evilly at him. "Good that you are on time," Wesley exclaimed. "Get in the back while I close for the day. Kiera is already there." A large bed was the only furniture in the abandoned room, and Kiera sat on the very edge, looking nervous. Their eyes met. They were strangers, and soon they were going to spend time together. Peter felt embarrassed and did not know what to say. "I am glad you came," Kiera said after some time. Peter could hear the insincerity in her voice. He looked at her. He had understood she was in as much trouble as he, and was as desperate as him to get out of her financial mess. It must irk Kiera tremendously that her husband had put her in this situation. He did not know how to reply. They could hear how Wesley was closing the shop. "I am glad you came too," Peter said, and Kiera smiled ruefully. Peter noticed that she had a much larger bag with her this time. Luckily, Wesley arrived before it became too awkward. He looked cheerful and was rubbing his hands together with satisfaction. "I am glad you are here," Wesley said. He was unknowingly echoing what they both had said. "Last week's movie turned out good for being your first one. Let's make a new one. Did you bring clothes?" he asked, pointing at Kiera's large bag. Then he turned to Peter. "It looks like you are wearing the same clothes as last week, but that does not matter. People don't care one bit what the guy is wearing." Kiera opened her bag and began to show off the clothes she had brought. Peter could imagine that she would look beautiful in it. Wesley seemed to think the same. She showed them a cute summer dress. It was sleeveless and short. Wesley didn't seem to like it. Finally, she showed them a cocktail dress. When she showed it, she was looking at Peter, not Wesley. He remembered how she said she would get it for him. It was short, sleeveless, and had a very deep cut in the front. "Yes, baby, now you're talking. I think it's already decided what clothes we use." He moved to his camera on the tripod. "You can change while I get ready." Kiera looked puzzled. Then she understood Wesley assumed she was changing clothes in front of them. She looked from Peter and Wesley, hesitating. Then she opened her mouth to say something but closed it again. She fidgeted around for a while, undecided about what to do. Wesley was occupied with his camera and lamps around the bed. Peter tried to look disinterested. The situation felt surreal. Kiera carefully began to change, dropping her clothes on the floor next to her bag. Peter felt excited. Dressed up, she looked incredible. Her dress was short, beautifully emphasizing her figure. "You look very beautiful," Wesley exclaimed. Peter realized that Wesley was ready with his camera and was openly admiring Kiera. "Turn around so we can look at you." Kiera scowled but did as he asked. "Nice. Very nice," Wesley said, turning around. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Ah, I know how we want to play it. But you will have to remove something from your clothes." "What?" "Just take it off. It will come off anyway, sooner or later." Kiera looked uncertain. Peter looked from one to the other, not wanting to say anything. He felt like the junior in the room with two adults battling wills. "Okay." Kiera relented and did as he asked. She looked as good as before. Wesley picked up the camera and started filming. "That's better. You can start now," Wesley said, looking at them through his camera. Kiera and Peter exchanged glances. Peter felt embarrassed. It was obvious that Kiera felt the same way. Peter wished they had had a chance to talk before starting. They had already spent time together once, but they were still strangers. He felt like he had a one-night stand that he regretted. Kiera looked as indecisive as he did. They both did it for the money, not because they were attracted to each other. "What do we do?" Kiera asked, looking at Peter. She sounded unsure. "Begin with making out. That is always a good start," Wesley decided. Hesitantly, Kiera stepped closer to Peter. He moved forward as well, feeling he had to take part. Kiera was beautiful in her dress, and it helped they hugged. It was embarrassing. Wesley came over with a camera. Peter felt very shy, and Kiera seemed to feel the same. She smelled faintly of the same perfume as last time. Her lips were soft when they met. Later, Peter could not remember who opened their lips first, but soon they became friends. She felt good in his arms, her tits pressed firmly against his chest. The hard lump in his pants dug into her crotch. His initial reaction was to retreat. She hugged his back tighter when she felt him pull away. Then she pressed her bump against the hard lump to show him it was okay. "Okay," Wesley said after a while. "Kiera, I want you to take the initiative." Kiera didn't respond to Wesley's request, but after arguing a bit more, she began to do as she was told. "Peter, it's your turn," Wesley said. Peter waited a bit like Kiera before following his instructions. He was generally inexperienced with girls. It felt strange to do this. He almost expected her to protest. She didn't say anything. They talked more. She didn't seem to mind when he pulled her close. "Great, Peter. Put her on the bed and start talking," Wesley said. This time he controlled them more than last time. Peter steered them towards the bed. The edge of the bed caught Kiera's calves, and she sat down and then lay back. Wesley gave Kiera unusual instructions. She must have understood what Wesley wanted and already accepted it. Without protesting, she did as he wanted. Peter began to do as he was told. It was wonderful. He had seen it many times in the movies, but he had never done it before. He started hesitantly, but then stretched harder. "I've never done this before," Peter confessed. "You're doing great, kid," Wesley said reassuringly. "Get a little higher so she can please you." Kiera must have expected this as well. She didn't say anything. He felt great following the instructions. Wesley, standing on his knees, walked around the bed and filmed the event from all sides. "Great, kid. Start doing nice, Kieri," Wesley ordered. Peter felt Kiera shiver when she heard Wesley, but she didn't say anything. He did as he was told. It was difficult given his position. He felt more than saw Wesley approaching and filming his actions. "Okay," Wesley said after a while. "Let's go further." Peter changed his position and turned around. Kiera looked beautiful. "Spend time with her on your side," Wesley demanded. Peter had seen it often in the movies and understood what Wesley was asking. Wesley was right, she was beautiful. Peter cautiously began to follow the order. She had a pleading expression as she looked at him. Her eyes were so wide open that he could see her squirrels all around. "Yeah, that's perfect," Wesley exclaimed. Peter continued. Kiera gasped with each movement. Soon she began to lubricate freely. Peter was getting faster. Wesley watched what they did and recorded it on camera. "Work harder. Hold her by her dress for leverage." Peter grabbed her tight dress. He bent over her and began to push harder. "Oh," Kiera exclaimed. Peter built a stable rhythm. Wesley cheered him on and exclaimed that he was doing great. "Change your position," Wesley demanded. Peter did as he was told and pulled Kiera. "Hoo-hoo," Kiera groaned. "Yeah, that's it." Wesley exclaimed, "Give her that." Peter did so. He grabbed her gathered dress for leverage and pressed into her fast and hard. Kiera grunted and gasped in resentment, but didn't complain. "Slap her," Kiera screamed as Peter slapped her hard. He worried for a moment that he was overdoing it, but Kiera gave a positive response. He hit her again, letting out a new scream. A red palm print was formed on it. Wesley looked pleased. They were more physical than ever, and Wesley was filming it all. "Pull her up by her hair and kiss her." Peter was completely enthralled and did as Wesley asked without a second thought. Kiera turned her head and they met in a deep, open kiss. She leaned against him. He felt the beginning of his pleasure. He was still holding her hair. She seemed to enjoy it, and he felt her shiver in response. "Okay," Wesley said after some time. "Change position. Kiera, get on top." It was Peter's turn to lie down on the dirty bed. He thought she looked incredibly beautiful as she settled into her position. Neither of his two previous girlfriends had been this beautiful. Wesley spent a long time filming them from every angle he could think of. He made them do unthinkable things, but they both understood that they liked the process. Wesley shot position after position. In the end, he was satisfied. Kiera obediently followed his last instruction. It should end happily, Wesley said. They continued. He almost zoned out when Wesley was right next to them, capturing everything through his lens. There was only Kiera and Peter. A tingling sensation up Peter's spine told him he was close. He got stronger. "Make sure you make it inside when you get there," Wesley ordered from Peter's side. Kiera had her face down on the mattress, but she heard Wesley and said something. It was too muffled to be heard, but Peter thought she had protested. Peter felt unsure of what to do and slackened his pace. Wesley slapped his shoulder and nodded reassuringly that he should go ahead. When the time came, he lost his rhythm and Kiera seemed to understand what was happening. She grimaced in protest. Peter had a good grip on her dress, and he had no problem keeping it in place. Peter enjoyed himself. Kiera whimpered beneath him, but he was too far away to care what she wanted. Wesley caught everything on camera. Peter felt that he had come as much as he had last week. Finally, he finished and sat back down heavily. Wesley approached her with a camera. "Don't move," he ordered her. She held still, her face pressed into the mattress beneath her. She was breathing heavily, as was Peter. Eventually, he stopped taking her off, and she rolled onto her back and sat up. She looked at the mess on herself and then at Peter. She had a dazed expression, and her eyes were wide. He had never done this before. It was different, and Kiera seemed to sense that the two of them had formed a special bond. Wesley stopped filming and stepped aside. Peter sat looking at Kiera. He didn't quite know what to feel. Wesley took care of the camera and left them alone. Kiera continued to stare at herself. Her expression was still stunned. He couldn't tell from her expression what she was thinking. Then she got out of bed and took out a roll of toilet paper from her purse. Peter watched as she wiped herself off. She needed a lot of paper. Kiera took out 2 bottles of water from her large bag and surprised Peter when she handed him one. She sat down on the bed next to him and took a big swig from the bottle. Peter realized he was thirsty and thankfully drank from the bottle Kiera had given him. "Okay, let's wrap this up. Let's get dressed and leave," Wesley said, looking impatient. Kiera got out of bed and dressed in the same clothes she had come in. Peter got dressed as well, but he couldn't help but stare at how sexy Kiera looked while getting dressed. She stuffed the other clothes she had brought into her bag. Outside, Wesley locked up and left them without even saying goodbye. Peter and Kiera stood looking at each other. They spent time together for the second time, but they were still strangers. It was an awkward silence. "Thanks for the water," Peter said. He winced. "It was a stupid thing to say. I figured we would get thirsty," Kiera replied. She blushed. It was an equally stilted reply. It became a long silence. "Well, I guess we'll see each other again next week," Peter said. "I guess we will," Kiera said. They looked at each other and neither knew what to say. They were still strangers and were going to spend time when they met again. After a long pause, Kiera shrugged. She waved slightly, turned on her heel, and walked away. "Kiera," Peter called after her. She paused and looked back. "Yes, you look good when you dress up." Kiera smiled at him, showing him her perfect lines of white teeth. "Thanks," she said, her smile reaching her eyes. She had a nice smile.
Subscribe to our channel so that your second C, Gaff, doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story. Because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.